I want to chat with you today about what I think is one of the most difficult topics in the Christian faith. Certainly one of the most difficult for me anyway, which is how do we forgive people when they've really, really hurt us? There's some really bad teaching, I think, out there on the internet about forgiveness. There's some really poor videos on YouTube about it as well. So I kind of want to give my take on it today and see if it's any help for you. I think some of the bad teaching is actually about defining what forgiveness is. I don't think that's always done very well. But more importantly, I think there's a lot of videos, there's a lot of teaching out there that just induces guilt and depression in us, because if we're finding it really hard to forgive someone, then we might watch a video, we might do a Google search for it or whatever, and then we come across a video or an article that tells us, quotes loads of verses from the Bible and kind of says, well, if you don't forgive somebody who's hurt you, then you can't receive God's forgiveness yourself. And the implication, of course, is that we are condemned to hell. We can't be saved unless we forgive others. We can't receive God's forgiveness for ourselves. You know, if you want to go plucking isolated verses out of the Bible and stitching them together, then yeah, you can argue that. But I don't think that's true. I don't think that's the way of Christ at all, actually. So what I want to do today really is to think about with you, firstly, how when we forgive other people, it sets us free emotionally, spiritually, sometimes physically as well. But also, I want to think about how you and I can be set free from guilt if we don't feel able to forgive someone who's hurt us badly. So that's going to be coming up towards the end of this video. And to consider this, there's a parable that Jesus gave after Peter asks him a question that we find in Matthew chapter 18 verses 21 to 35. So we're going to be thinking a little bit about that. But we're going to start off by thinking about the question that Peter asked Jesus. Now, it's a question you're probably aware of. Peter says to Jesus, if somebody hurts me, how many times do I have to forgive them? 7 times 7? And Jesus says to him, no, 70 times 7. He fell in a little stream there. You see that? There's little bits of wood there for me to climb over and I slipped, so I've now got an extremely wet right foot. So Peter says, how many times should I forgive someone? Now, this is a really interesting question, of course, because for Peter, what he's asking Jesus is that if we've been hurt by people, what's a reasonable amount to forgive them? What's reasonable? And I guess we've all felt like that before, haven't we? Where somebody has hurt our feelings, or somebody has done something to hurt us, and we forgive them, and then they do it again, or they hurt us again in another way, and we might forgive them again. And then we get to thinking, how many times should I forgive this person when they just keep on repeatedly offending against me? What's a reasonable amount of times to forgive? It's a very, very human question. So for Peter, forgiveness was all about numbers. If someone's hurt me, what is it? What's a reasonable expectation for me to forgive that person? But Jesus' response, by giving him a ridiculously high number, a number that in Jewish culture kind of represented infinity, he's basically encouraging Peter to stop counting, to stop equating forgiveness with numbers. After all, we can't do that with love, can we? We can't say, how many times should I love someone? If somebody does something nice to me, what's a reasonable amount of times to love them? It doesn't work with love. And it can't really work with forgiveness. And the reason that it can't work with forgiveness is for two reasons. Firstly, because, as we're going to see, forgiveness is not a series of standalone decisions. That's the first thing we need to realise, that we think very often of forgiveness in terms of an individual decision to forgive someone and then to move on. And if they hurt us again, to forgive them again and to move on. As if forgiveness is a series of standalone decisions that we make in response to how somebody has acted towards us. But you know, forgiveness isn't that. Forgiveness isn't a series of standalone decisions. Forgiveness is an expression of love. Even if we might not feel like we love the person whom we're forgiving, and certainly that's the case, isn't it? When somebody's hurt us, we might be able to forgive them, but we might not be able to find it in our hearts to feel feelings or warm feelings of love towards them. And I think that's okay, actually. But forgiveness, regardless of how we feel, is an expression of love. So we can't count love. We can't count expressions of love. So therefore, we can't ask the question, how many times should I forgive someone who's hurt me? And part of the reason I've stopped here because there was a bit of a storm blowing last night, and the path that I was going to walk up, look, there's a huge trees come down across it, and there's another path up there, but the trees come down across that one as well. So I'm a bit stuck, really, not quite sure where to go. Let's walk up this path and see if there's a way around it. Anyway, yeah, part of the reason I think that we get into the mindset of counting with forgiveness is that we relate forgiveness to the law. We live under a legal system. Most countries in the world live under a legal system whereby if people break the law, then they are brought to justice, and society then decides whether or not they are going to be punished, and for how long, and with what severity, or if they are going to just be let off, set free. And I think part of the problem that we have is that we relate forgiveness to the law, as if when someone hurts us, we should respond in the same way. Are we going to punish them? Or are we going to let them off, as it were? But if we think of forgiveness in those terms, then I think we misunderstand the nature of forgiveness. Because what we're then thinking is that forgiveness is about the regulation of behaviour. That if I forgive somebody for what they've done, then they won't do it again. But forgiveness, as I say, is an expression of love. It's not a aspect of the law, as it were. Just to show you where we're walking now, I found this little path up here through the woods. Should we have a walk up here and see where this takes us? Never been up this path before. New for me, as it probably is for you. Yeah, so there we are. So first, that's the first thing I want to say then. Forgiveness isn't about the numbers game. It's an expression of love. It's not a kind of legal response to people doing wrong to us. And then in Matthew 18, after Jesus responds to Peter in this way and gives him this teaching, he then goes on to tell the parable of the unforgiving servant. The king forgives the debt of the servant, and then the servant is owed a lesser debt by another servant, but refuses to forgive that debt. And the parable ends in verse 34 with the king throwing the unforgiving servant into prison, where he suffers a terrible torment. Now, is this saying that if we don't forgive people, then God will punish us? That if we refuse to forgive others, then God will somehow throw us into prison, as it were, spiritually, and we will be eternally tormented? I've watched some videos, you may have seen videos like this as well, where people say, you know, that we are condemned to hell if we don't forgive others. We can't receive salvation and forgiveness from God if we don't forgive others. Well, I don't think that's what this verse is saying at all in Matthew 18, verse 34. This pathway is very steep. You know, when in Scripture it says we should take the steep and rugged pathway. I'm living it out as a metaphor right now. No, I don't think that's what this verse is saying at all. I think there's a sense in which, you know, if you and I do not forgive people who have hurt us, there's a sense in which we're already in a prison of torment. It might be that in this parable, Jesus is describing to us the spiritual condition in which we find ourselves if we do not forgive others. Now, there is somebody, I'm not going to go into any detail, but there is somebody who in the past really, really hurt me, really badly. And I still haven't forgiven them. And I find it almost impossible to forgive them for what they did to me. I tried to over the years, but I've just not found it possible at all. Now, the reality is that that person is going on with their life perfectly happy, unaware of my inability to forgive them. And they've probably forgotten all about me, to be honest. It's not somebody I'm in touch with anymore. So they've probably forgotten all about me. But my inability to forgive them makes me a prisoner, because that situation from all those years ago still eats away at me. And their response to me all those years ago eats away at me. So who is suffering as a result of this inability to forgive? It's not the other person, it's me. I'm the one who is sort of spiritually imprisoned through lack of forgiveness. And it reminds me perhaps of that verse 34 in Matthew 18, with the unforgiving servant being thrown into prison. Maybe that's a bit like a prison of our own making when we refuse to forgive. So when it comes to forgiveness, I don't know whether to carry on up this hill or not. It's pretty steep. Doesn't look it from this angle, but this is a very, very steep hill. So when it comes to forgiveness, I think that we need to develop a new way of thinking. When it comes to forgiving others, we need to learn not to count the hurts. Now, I have been guilty of doing that all my life, and maybe you do as well. You know, to think about certain people and to kind of count and remember and list the ways in which they've hurt us in life. Certainly something I've been guilty of. But in doing that, I put myself in an emotional and spiritual prison. And part of what it means to forgive others, I think, is for us not to be held captive by the past. All the while that we do not forgive other people, we are held captive by the past. Here's a real truism about forgiveness. That forgiveness is a decision about the past that determines the future. Forgiveness is a decision about the past that determines the future. Can I forgive that person who hurt me all those years ago? And if I can, then that will create a new future for me, where I am no longer imprisoned by anger and bitterness with regard to what happened in the past. Forgiveness is a decision about the past that determines the future. So when we forgive others, in a sense, it sets us free. That's the beauty of the power of forgiveness. Not necessarily what it brings the other person, but that it sets us free from the power of the past. I heard a brilliant quote about forgiveness, and I want to give you that quote today. And what it says is this. Can't remember who said it, so I apologise. But the quote was this. I read it in a book. Forgiveness is letting go of the hope that the past can be changed. Forgiveness is letting go of the hope that the past can be changed. Now, I think that is a really profound definition of what forgiveness is. That we can look back with regret on the past, things that people have done to us, nearly fell over then, things that people have done to us, things that have happened to us. And we can look back with a sense of regret and wish that those things had never happened. But forgiveness is letting go of the hope that the past can be changed. Take that with you into today. Reflect on that and use that as a prism to explore your relationship with the past. And then you'll understand just what an enormously powerful concept that truly is. Sorry about the jump in film here. I'm filming this on my iPhone, and the memory got full, so I've just had to stand here in the woods and delete a load of stuff off my phone so that I can finish off this chat with you. So apologies about the cut there. But anyway, yeah, I was saying that I think if we can forgive other people, then it opens up new possibilities for the future for us, because we are no longer imprisoned by what's happened in the past. But the second thing I want to say, and a little bit more briefly, is this, that yes, we have a choice about the power of the past over us. But also, I just want to say to you today that forgiveness is a process. It's a process. Some of us have been so badly hurt by people, so badly, that it is almost impossible to imagine a world when we have forgiven them. Now, I'm not talking about when somebody has said something against us and hurt our feelings or, on that level. I'm talking about really profound acts of evil against us, or really profound acts of wickedness against us. And we can't imagine it having the ability to forgive. And I want to say to you today that if you find yourself in that place, it's okay. It's okay not to be able to forgive somebody for something they've done for you in the past. Because I think that forgiveness is a journey. It's a process. For some things, we can just make the decision and just go, yep, okay, I'm going to forgive and move on. But there are other things in life that it may take months, years, a lifetime to forgive. And we may even get to the end of our life and still not have been able to forgive that person. And I want to say to you, that's okay to think of forgiveness as a journey. Don't be taken in by this really dodgy teaching that people give that's saying, well, if you don't forgive, then you can't be saved. If you don't forgive, then you can't receive God's forgiveness for yourself. That's too trite, and it's too insensitive, and it's not filled with the grace of the gospel as far as I'm concerned. It's just taking Bible verses out of context. I think that God honours you if he sees that you're on a journey towards forgiveness. And, you know, for this person in the past who's forgiven me, I'll tell you who has hurt me. I can't even say their name. Like, when I try to pray for them, I cannot even bring myself to say their name. That's how far back I am from being able to forgive this person. But God knows my heart, and he knows that I want to forgive them. And I think that's good enough for God at the moment. And God knows that I'm on a journey into forgiveness. And it may be that you are in a similar situation to me with regard to that. So I just kind of want to finish today by saying, you know, forgiveness is an expression of love. It's not about a legal response to other people's behaviour. It's not about reason, if you like. What's the reasonable amount of times that I should forgive someone? It is an act of love that transcends reason. But some of us have experienced such deep hurt that it feels almost impossible to forgive. And please don't feel guilty if you are unable to forgive at the present time. Please don't feel that you are unacceptable to God, or that God will not forgive you because you have not been able to forgive that other person. It's a journey. It's a process. It might be something that you can make a conscious decision about and just forgive somebody on the spur of the moment. But for those really deep hurts, I would say embrace the journey and be prepared for it to take a lifetime, or maybe even longer, to forgive. So don't beat yourself up. Forgiveness is the road to freedom. Undoubtedly, it's the road to freedom. It's the road we must travel if we want to be spiritually free ourselves. But it can be a long and hard route, a bit like this path that I've been on today. A bit windy, bit up and down, barriers across it everywhere. So I'm sorry that this has been a bit of a bitty video today in that regard. But maybe it's been a metaphor for the journey of forgiveness that many of us are travelling. So yeah, be assured of God's love for you. Be assured of God's forgiveness for you. To the best of your ability, forgive others who may have hurt you. But yeah, just journey on. And if you can't do that right now, that's absolutely fine. Journey on into God, and at the right time and in the right ways, you may be able to find ways to be reconciled to your past and to forgive those who've hurt you. So I wish you all the best on the journey into forgiveness, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon. Take care. Bye.